As everyone rolls in, let's get started. I'll start just reviewing housekeeping stuff as everyone rolls in. Just to introduce myself, I'm Kanika Pandey, and I'm going to be hosting today's session. Putting a spotlight on field sales is now the time for data-driven rep management. This session is a part of our inaugural Momentum 2020 event. We're super pumped about it, and we're so glad that you guys are joining. Thank you. We're really excited to bring you guys this amazing lineup of speakers so you can learn from them and optimize your team's performance and drive better business outcomes. Here are awesome speakers. And we'd also like to take this chance to thank our event sponsors, Outreach, ZoomInfo, Connect and Sell, Aircall, Sapper Consulting, ScaleX, and Speckit. Please visit the sponsor websites on the Momentum event website when you guys get the chance to learn more about them as well. A couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this session, so and we can share it with you guys afterwards, so don't worry about any of that stuff. If you have any technical issues, definitely go ahead and put that in the chat as well. And if you have questions, definitely put that in. We want this to be an interactive session, so, and I know that all of our speakers definitely want everyone to be asking questions and stay involved. Today for this session, our moderator is going to be the awesome Morgan Ingram. Just a little intro for you. Currently, Morgan is serving as the Director of Sales Execution and Evolution at JB Sales Training, where he supports the sales reps and businesses to succeed. Also the host of a podcast and YouTube channel called the SDR Chronicles, which is very helpful, where he provides sales techniques and advice about how to further your sales journey. His accolades include being a LinkedIn top sales voice for not just 2018, but also 2019, along with being a top 25 sales development thought leader. But you guys are here to hear from them, so take it away.
Awesome. All right, so as we all go into the session today, I'm going to do a quick poll so we see who's here. So I'm going to launch this up so you guys can see it. So real quick, if you guys will vote on this is helpful. What is your role as of today? So I'm going to see kind of where everyone is tuning in. So we see the results flying in here. We got a good mix here. If you're other, I'm curious what you are as other. If you want to put that in there and be like, hey, I'm marketing or et cetera. But we got obviously the votes coming in here. So it looks like a good amount of people are split between this inside sales and also sales leader. We also have some enablement in the house. Obviously filled some sales reps in the house. So that's good. So guys, as everyone's coming in here, fill this out here. I want to make sure everyone gets the good amount of this. And, you know, as we are going through this poll, you know, real quick, I want everyone else to get introduced. Who else we have on this panel? Because again, we got some rock stars on this panel. So we'll start with Bob, you know, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll just go to each person, and then we'll hop right into the questions that we have prepared for you all today.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Great. Thanks so much for having me. Bob Perkins with the AAISP, Global Inside Sales Association.
Cool.
I'll go. I'm LB, Lauren Bailey. I'm a founder and leader of Factor 8 and Girls Club, and we work with virtual sales teams at the rep and management level.
Awesome.
I can go next. I'm Shay Keeler, and I'm a sales manager at Outreach.
I'm Dan Bro. I'm the sales leader for Remax Integra. Most of you know who Remax is, the real estate firm. We are a franchisor, a sub-franchisor for them actually in 37 countries we do.
So the question is, Dan, out of those 37 countries, have you been to all of the 37 countries that you all are in? And then if you have, like, which one has been your favorite? I'm actually just genuinely curious.
Well, so I'm not sure I've been to all 37, but probably. I have responsibility actually for just North America. But in a former life, when I had a consulting practice, I was throughout Europe. And where would my favorite be? Probably Switzerland, because there was a great vacation involved for Karen and I, but so many good choices. Really good ones.
Awesome. So we have the world traveler Dan over here as well. So hey, we got a lot of knowledge on this panel, and you guys just saw right here the poll results. So we have just a good mix of people here, which is pretty awesome to see. So we're going to be talking to all levels of this. Inside sales, you're going to learn a couple things here today. Field sales reps, you're going to learn some stuff. Sales leaders, sales enablement. Everyone here, take the information that you learned from these panelists today and then look at it from your lens so then you can figure out how to execute it. So with that being said, let's hop right into what we're going to talk about today. And I have questions that the panel, we've been talking about this, that we're going to dive into. So first we want to talk about what this conversation is, which is going from field reps to inside sales. So my first question, and this is for everyone on the panel, whoever wants to hop into this first, is stigma for field sales reps. And what that means is that, hey, I'm a field sales rep. Now I got to go to the inside, but hey, I'm a field rep. I don't even doing these things. So how do we get around this? And how do we talk to our field reps that have to now do these inside sales motions due to the current climate we're in? So whoever wants to tackle that first, go right into it.
So I'll take a swing at that. This is Dan. I think we all went really stir crazy in at least the first couple months before we began to settle in. I was part of that stir craziness. I think what we really worked on, as I recall, as a team was just, look, let's go back to the core of what we do and why. And, we would spend time in our meetings really talking about that, thinking about it. It was a healthy thing to do. And, at the core, at least in our business, we're trying to help somebody achieve something that they can only uniquely do through franchising. And a reminder of that led us to really affirm, what we can do that from a desk. We've actually, most of us that have been outside have been working from a car or a plane or wherever for most of our lives. This just happens to be one location, and it happens to be at home. So a bit odd, but the core of who we are and what we're trying to do hasn't changed, and affirming that and sticking to it has sort of encouraged us, I think.
I'm hearing more about the stigma, right? We're having more and more traditional field sales teams come to us at Factor 8 saying, my sellers are struggling because everybody's virtual now, right? I mean, hell, we could have added that to the poll, right? Who isn't field sales anymore?
Right.
But they're really, really clear saying, listen, when you work with us, you can't use that term, right? Like, sorry, don't say inside sales because my field sellers have been looking down on that team for 10 years, which breaks my heart a little bit, right? Because I am a flag carrying lover of virtual sales. And I think now's the time that these guys have got to brush up on those skills. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and be a little bit controversial. I've seen a ton of inside reps move to the field and be wildly successful. It's the normal career path. I have not seen many field sellers move to the inside and be equally successful. And now we're all living that. And there's probably a million reasons why, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, that we can talk about it. But I think it's an incredible opportunity for seasoned field sellers to learn a new bucket of tools that their younger, less tenured, less cool inside reps have been mastering for decades. Bob, what do you hear out there?
I got a call in late March from Judy Buckholz. Judy Buckholz is a senior leader at IBM. She said, Bob, I have 45 field reps that call on Citibank. Now, these are all multi-million-dollar quotas. They are all very senior, making a whole lot of money. And she said, can you come on a call and just talk through this I'm stuck at home thing from an inside perspective? So I got on the call, kind of not knowing what to expect. And lo and behold, these very tenured, very senior, big quota people were very curious and wanted to learn. And I told them things like time blocking. I talked to them about the value of video because they were always face-to-face. Well, video's the next best thing. And they were all ears. And, they're successful for a reason. Mm-hmm. And there's no shame in being stuck at home and having to call a person. They've been using video for years when they're home. So, I don't think it's, I think it starts with the leader. She took control and said, hey, we're in a tough predicament. It may be a while before you go back and walk the halls, but we're going to get after it. So.
Good. I love that. No surprise with Judy and IBM and their sellers and that learning culture and where they are. That's awesome.
I think that's a great point that you said there, Bob, is like going back and figure out like, how can I adjust? How can I learn some things that maybe I knew in the past, but also adjust to what's going on? And so great points there. And then Scott asked this question, which is, this for everyone here is, and I know, Lauren, you just answered it to it, right? But why does there have to be a distinction at all? Aren't we all just sales pros with different tools, which
we are now.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
We are now.
At this point, right? But why does it need a distinction at all? Does anyone want to talk to that? Do they feel like there should be like, no, like this is two separate things? Like, what are y'all feeling here?
I think if anything, it's exciting for if you want to classify field sellers versus inside, because they've gotten so much time back in their day and their week and their month, right? Like what they used to spend traveling, going to meetings, to take up to 3-4 days, they've got that back. And so some things we've done on my team is like blocking out days, like before a big meeting, like block it out like you're traveling so that you're getting in that mindset, you're spending the time to prep and prepare and do that. But I would disagree. I think that like at Outreach, we're kind of all the same. We go in person, we take virtual meetings. And so I think it's an exciting time for like the future of sellers, is just that you can be well diverse in a variety of different ways, regardless of if you're a field seller or an inside seller. You now can just be the best that you could possibly be.
Yeah, it's good.
And this goes into the next part, which is talks about the struggles, right? So there's the stigma, but now, Bob, you had that call, right? Someone called you. So now it's like there are struggles here. So Bob had touched on a little bit of them, but obviously we'd like to hear, from Dan and Lauren on this one, which is like, what are the main struggles that a field rep is struggling with transitioning to inside sales?
Oh, there's a list.
I thought you were going to pull out a list. You were like, well, hey, I got you.
I don't know where to start.
I'll go first.
So one of my top salesperson said to me, and he travels a lot. I shared with some of you earlier that he has to travel a couple, 3 hours, many days to get to a different state to conduct his business. And we were talking early on when this started occurring, and he said, look, Dan, I'm the kind of person that I'm like a dog. I start to salivate when I grab my keys and they jingle on the way to the car. And he said, I just don't ever get to hear the jingle anymore. So I'm like a lost puppy. What do I do? And like, I'm not sure that I can really logically explain it. It's just a change of life. It's a different season. And it's not the way we've always done things. So we're kind of at that spot that it's like, get over it. We're not really talking about it that much anymore, but.
Have him put his car keys up by the Zoom button. So Zoom
right there you go. Hang them there. But it's all kind of personal things too. Lauren, I know you'll add to this, but it's the dogs, my 2 dachshunds that are probably going to bark at some point, and I've isolated them. My wife's in another state visiting family. I've done all I can, but it's probably going to happen. And it's like, the first 60 days you're trying to figure out, oh my God, I would never do that in a meeting. Yeah. And now you just like, okay, my dog's barked, so what? You just.
And I love that part. Like, I think it's rehumanized all of us.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to get Underoos in here in any second. And it used to be like epic fail, and now it's just a Tuesday,
Right. Right.
Yeah. I love that part, but that's virtual, and now the rest of the world's coming to us. So
I'm excited for your kids to walk in the door that you've bolted, because they probably know how to unbolt it and walk in.
They know all the tricks.
They will figure it out. They think it's great. I've literally had it sometime where I've been like, whose kid's in the background? Oh crap, that's my kid.
Yeah.
I know that kid. All right, so I got a couple of hard skills too, I'm hearing. So I think one of the hardest things is it's like, I can't get a hold of the people I used to get a hold of. And we know that from virtual selling, right? We know you've got to make at least 6 attempts before you give up to get a hold of the majority of people.
Yeah.
Well, they're used to being able to swing by, right? And now we can't. So it's that whole idea of, what do you mean I'm going to have to make 30 dials to have the same number of conversations that I could have had by getting on a plane once or driving 30 minutes?
Lauren, speaking of hard to get, I learned this tip from Steve Richard, actually, several years ago. And, Steve said, when you got the relationship and you got someone on the phone, of course, we were inside sales, make sure you ask them, hey, just in case something happens, I'm stuck in traffic, can I get your cell number? So why not today have the field reps that have relationships for the most part, say, you know what, given this, this lockdown and all that, how do you feel about if I really need to reach you, I text you? Get permission to text.
Brilliant. Got to do it and make it easier for ourselves. And in the same vein, when you're on the call, bridge to the next. Because you don't have a 60-minute face-to-face with bookends, right? Of walking in, walking out. Like you're used to having 90 minutes of influence, visual cues, selling time, etc. Now everything has to get shorter. Like a really successful inside sales unexpected call, it's like less than 5 minutes, which means you got time for one thing, which means you've got to bridge to the next call on this call. So never hang up until you've got the next one scheduled. Another just basic tactical thing that they're not used to having to think about. Yeah. Right. So like shortening the pitch, shortening the goals, and then bridging to the next one and getting the cell number so that you can get a hold of them the next time.
Yeah. One of the things we measure, Lauren, we ask our salespeople, and just for the record, our salespeople are they're outside salespeople, but they're used to making dials to set up appointments. So they're used to doing that, measuring it, tracking it, reporting it. All of that is historical for us. But we have really re-emphasized that when you're on a call with somebody, in our sales process, probably 6 to 8 to 15 different face-to-face meetings normally, which are all done almost all by Zoom now. You got to book the next 2 to 3 meetings before you close this one. So, hey, we're in a process. It's going to take 30 to 60 days. There's 8 to 10 meetings. Let's book the next 2 or 3. So I love the way you said that. It's very, very important.
I like that you took it further and you booked the next couple. That's
brilliant.
Yeah.
It can be done if you ask. 9 times out of 10, people say, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
There's some good research out there too that shows that when you're talking about the sales process and what to expect in the sales process on the first call, you've got higher close rates. And I think that's a psychological switch for the buyer. I'm out of the investigation research mode, and now I'm officially being led into the buy process and mode. And that mental switch, right, helps them tune in and take the call and book those meetings. Good practice.
That's one of the key conversations that we actually listen for with Exec Vision, is that invitation to come take a journey with us for the next 30 to 60 days, 8 to 10 meetings, because that really sets the whole thing up.
Love that. I'm taking that tip.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I want to add 2 things to that, because one thing Lauren said, Bob mentioned it as well, is getting people's phone numbers. So I looked this up, and text messages have a 90% view rate. Listen, we need to take a step back.
Yeah.
So 90% view rate. If someone has an email campaign that's doing that, like, let's talk. But most people don't even have even close to that, right? So industry standard on open rates for emails around 50 to 22%. So if I can get a 90% open rate, I'm going to do that. So you should immediately be asking people for texts. I do this on all my calls as much as I can. Like, I'll be like, hey, what's the best way for me to communicate with you moving forward? Is it email or is it text? And I always say text at the end to let them know that, like, I want to get your phone number. And most people are going to be like, yeah, let's text. It's a lot easier. So that's what I'll be doing for everyone here. It's just going to be something that's going to help you out a lot. I have, for like most of the clients that I talk to, I have their number because it's easier to text than thinking about, oh, I got all these emails I have to go through. And I really like what Dan said. Another thing is, I always encourage reps and leaders to tell their reps is have a sticky note that says next steps on your computer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you walk out of a call and don't get next steps, like, you could think the conversation went really well, but that person's going to forget you in like 5 seconds.
You're starting over then, man. Right?
Exactly.
I got to get hold of them.
I got to follow up with you. I don't want to do that. So I want to get the next steps right there. So what everyone said here, really pay attention to it because it's really important.
Now, Shay, did you start to say something?
Oh, I was just saying, I think that skill that Dan and Lauren were talking about of the next steps and getting the next meetings, that's just going to help everyone even when we get back to being in the field, like, and we go back to those in person, if you're working that process, that's just going to set you up to be more successful, and then get the cell phone number and you're really going to be in business.
I don't think there's any of these virtual inside skills that aren't effective, right? And it's funny. I was talking to people earlier in this pandemic. We're like, well, we're not so sure we want to teach them this or not because we're going to go back to the office. And I was like,
No,
Nope.
no, don't do that, man.
it's going to help no matter what. And by the way, joke's on you. We're not back all in the office.
That's right. Right. Well, I just have a chuckle moment for you guys as you're talking about getting the cell phone number. So I haven't always worked in real estate. That's just the last like 12 or 13 years. But real estate agents and owners that we call on are not shy about having their cell phone plastered all over the world. And so, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. We have no trouble getting a cell phone number. Just give it to you.
Yeah, right. On a bus bench, on the side of a bus.
Right. The restroom. Oh, yeah, I got your number.
For a good house call. I think that now it opens the door for us who have been in more traditional industries where you wouldn't ask. I think about pharma reps and folks who aren't going to ask for, the doctor's cell phone number. Well, so many of us are relegated to home and we don't necessarily have the office lines. It is the perfect opportunity to raise your cell phone game. That's how we're getting a hold of people today. So it's an open door to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this leads into this last question, and then we'll go into some other questions that we'll get into more tactical pieces, Peter. But for those salespeople that have come inside and they're like saying, some sales reps say this, I don't like this new way of selling. It's not for me. Is it, hey, just get it together and figure it out? Or are there other alternatives that they need to take? Like, what's going on with that?
You have some industries, and I'm going to share a real example with you that are so everything is face to face. It's always been face to face. It's continuing to be face to face. And the example I'm sharing is a member of the AISP called Ink Cycle is this huge first tier distributor of we'll say copier, toner, and ink and all that stuff. They have 200 local businesses that then sell into a market. So they may have a Florida group of 3, facilities, that copier facilities that sell Ink Cycle's product. And we got on a call with about 40 of these dealers, these local dealers. And they're like, we're stuck inside. We can't wait for this to end. And we're paralyzed, right? Well, really little did they know that it's just a phone call away, or it's a Zoom away, or a text from maintaining that. They were so used to walking in with donuts to these dealers that it was sort of like they were trying to do what they've always done, and hoping to get a different, result. And the fact is they really had to have a big mindset change. For others industries, like the IBM reps, we were doing a lot of our meetings virtually anyway. Well, we still got out to see customers a lot. So there's a spectrum there. And to Lauren's point about pharma, which, that has its own regulations and constraints.
I think you'll see that the folks who can't pivot struggle long-term, right? There is, you guys, I don't know. I mean, show of hands, maybe it's a good chatted in question, but will we ever go back 100% to where we were before? And I think that answer is unequivocally, in my opinion, no. And we've watched businesses die because they weren't able to pivot your go-to-market strategy, your product mix, your sales method, momentum, whatever it is, right? Process. And we're watching some businesses who aren't surviving this pandemic and others who are thriving. And I think we can expect the same at the seller level.
Lauren, we just did research with not Accenture, another company. And we specifically asked, after the pandemic is done, what are you going to do? Are you going to go back into the office like you were before? Are you going to stay at home? You're going to be surprised at the results. Only 20% of the sales reps are planning to go back to the office full time. 20%. 45% said it's going to be a combination of the two. We'll go to the office for a meeting or if we need to. 35% are staying home. So now put the customer lens on that. They're going to act and behave very similarly. Are they going to open up their doors to people coming in to visit them or not?
Well, there's like so many guidelines and regulations to even get your foot in the door at a customer too. Like they're not just going to let you like walk in and pop by like you used to be able to, like temperature checks, health checks. Like, you know, it's not going to be the same process when we even do get back into that office.
Yep.
Yeah. I've I've thought about this a little bit. I just say that I've begun to flip my lens. Like, I don't think I did this right away, not in the first 90 to 100 days, because I think I still looked at myself and my salespeople as outside, sellers. Yeah. But I've begun to flip it and begin to analyze my own skill set in selling and helping my sales reps perform, and look through the lens of my sales reps as you're an inside person. And do your skills line up with the skills it really takes to be successful from the inside? And I think they're certainly learnable. I think you can carry what you took from the field inside with you. But I think you have to think of yourself that way and say, okay, well, how do I look on Zoom? How do I interact? Can I generate? Can I give? Can I, am I good at it? And I think there are some people that are better than others. So if I summed it up, probably too wordy, but I'd say, think of yourself as being an inside person. And as a sales leader, think of your own people that way, and how can you coach them? Because we got a number to hit this quarter and next year. And I think, to your point, Shay, I don't think we're going in and out of offices anytime soon. I did 40 flights last year, probably 15 of them to Toronto and back, like once or twice a month. Toronto, the Prime Minister's not opening the door for me to do that.
That's not happening.
Anytime. It's not going to happen.
It's not happening.
I don't think so.
So I need to bring up a great point, Dan, and this leads us into a lot of questions we have here. And there's a lot here that we're going to talk about. Video is really key, and there's a lot of questions here. But you mentioned video, so I want to go to that, right? So the question here is like, hey, look, a lot of people talk about how can you get better at Zoom video? What can you be doing? But what are the simple tips to improve your effectiveness once you're on a Zoom call and you're on video? What should you be mindful of? What shouldn't you be doing? What's something you all have maybe seen as you're doing selling and you're talking to people that you're training and coaching and have teams on? Like, what are you telling them to do to be effective when it comes to video and on these Zoom calls?
Sorry, probably my first thing floating in my head, I was trying to decide whether I should say it or not, but it's probably what my wife tells me, which is pay attention. And, so it's just basic communication, but there is a thing about just paying attention, and the other person is looking at you in a different way. And so are you looking here, or when you form, like I've got one guy that I work with who's a great salesperson, but when I watch him formulating a question on a Zoom call that we're both on, I know where he's looking in his house. He's looking at the water in Maine. And I'm like, listen, it looks like you've just lost your mind for a minute. Bring it back right here. So it's really tactical, but some of those things, I just think they really matter. So it's here's why we're having this call. Here's what we hope to accomplish. I'm going to save 10 minutes at the end so we can, kind of recap and formulate next steps. I don't know. I'll stop there.
We had a speaker, Leo Cardenas. He's a body language expert. He spoke a couple times at our events around body language for inside sales. Really? And he goes, yep. He said, he even taught body language if you were making a phone-to-phone call.
Yeah.
Not Zoom. And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, look up the person's picture on LinkedIn and put their picture in your brain, because it will help release something called oxytocin, which is a feel-good chemical. Now we have Zoom. So I look at Lauren, hey, Lauren, I big smile. I use my hands. We're connecting. But I have to look at her. I have to smile. I have to use gestures. And the more I do that, the more of this oxytocin is released between the two of us, and the more connected we feel. So,
Right.
I
body
think
language.
as leaders, we have to start with the basics, though, just to be frank, right? I mean, we've all been on calls with people where we got all kinds of weirdness happening in the background, right? So we start with that. Then the angle, right? The guy who's got his cell phone and he's using it, so you're just staring up his nose.
It's like, what are you doing? Yep.
Right? We have to work on that. The person who's working during it and the whole time they're doing this and they're typing and it doesn't seem like they're paying attention. So, you know, you start with some of those basics. Somebody who's way far away or somebody who's sitting too close, help them get the frame correct. And then what's fascinating about this is now we're teaching visual cues to non-visual sellers. So it's been a shock to me to feel people who are resisting it more. And who are struggling with it more, because our inside teams are like, hallelujah, I get to see these people. It opens up a whole new world.
Yep.
Now, it does open up the can of worms, like the non-active listener, right? The person who's multitasking, the person who has triple screens and is spending the whole meeting looking the wrong way. You've got to watch those and coach them as leaders. Now, you must drive along, you must go with, you must attend to these things so you can see what's happening and give that feedback. Now there's this whole other area of presenting screen, right? It's almost like demo training with the reps who are moving too fast and the mouse over here and how do I share and what do I do and you know, can you see it? Wait, how do I? Right? All those things can kill a meeting. So it's worth a little training internally on getting that figured out.
And here's a big one real quick. I'm just going to turn my camera, you know, spend the $29 and get a light out in front of you. It doesn't have to be a fancy light, you know, but remember this thing about seeing a person's face is so important. Seeing them smile, looking, connecting eye to eye, as Lauren mentioned.
Yeah. And look at Bob's cool background, right?
Bob's got the great background.
He's got the best setup.
Yeah, I gotta fix it now.
Now he's got to fix it. So true, right? And ladies, by the way, you know the Zoom feature where it's like smooth features. Go into advanced settings. You'll thank me.
You looked younger today when I saw you, Lauren. Is that what it is?
The smooth settings. There you go.
Yes.
This is an additional tip for everyone when it comes to video as well, is that when you're talking, don't look at yourself.
Yeah, I do it all the time. Yeah.
It's just like a force of habit, because like, oh yeah, let me look at myself as I talk, but it's obviously not to the audience. So I have a Mac, mine's a green dot. For some people it might be a red dot, but when I'm talking, I always look at the camera, because that way people are seeing it as if I'm having a real conversation with you, right? Because video right now is the closest thing that we're gonna get to a face-to-face conversation for quite a while. So what I want to do is I want to look at this dot that's in front of me, and then allows me to have that conversation as well. So when you're doing these conversations, make sure you're doing that too. And you're not just like looking at, you know, you mentioned looking at the water, or, hey, looking at this, you know, portrait that I have. I want to look at the camera so then people know I'm talking directly to them.
Something that oh, sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I stink at that. I'm looking at Shay talking and she's next to me. And if I look at my camera, it looks like I'm listening to Shay, but I'm not.
Yeah. I think back and forth a little bit is appropriate. Again, Steve Richards, shout out to Steve. The tip this morning was, you know, don't have your head down. If you were an in-person, you wouldn't be writing the entire time. You would be looking primarily at the person across the table. Occasionally you write a note and you look right back at them. And I think the same thing holds true here. It's okay. Sometimes I have to take notes. I get permission. You'll see me look to the right. You might hear me click because I need to take important notes, but I won't do it a lot. Oh, okay.
Great
So
point.
true. Shay, I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you
Oh,
going to
no,
say?
you're good. I was just saying something. I definitely feel the Zoom fatigue, like as I think everyone does being on it all day. So I've transitioned some like one-on-ones and stuff just to being on the phone because it's such a relief from just like staring at each other all day.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
Zoom
that's
fatigue is
something-
real.
Great idea.
It's so
That's a
so
good
real,
idea.
and it's like you just feel like a new human. You can walk around, go do something different. But I think that's really helpful. You're not just staring eye to eye.
I don't live
with
at my desk all day. I can leave.
Yeah, it's a wild world out
That's a thing.
I swear, I was out for lunch and I had to call Cameron, and I called her on the phone. I go, "This is really cool. I can talk to her."
Your voice still moves.
It's crazy how that works.
But I think it's sort of opposite. Like I think we have to proactively get our customers to turn on cameras so that we have that connection and the oxytocin, right? But then as leaders, give our team a freaking break because, like you said, Zoom fatigue is real. And there's an art to that as well. Asking a customer to turn on a camera when they're not used to it. And I think that's where a lot of reps struggle, especially our newer.
How do you do that?
Yeah,
Can
so
you
how do
share-
you do that? That's
Yeah.
how I was, how does that happen? Turn on your camera.
Right? Just stop. I will not talk to you unless. Yeah. I jokingly use the word camera bullying, right? Like, hey, I'm going to camera bully you. I would love the chance to see you face to face. I also say, hey, listen, no judgment. I've got on yoga pants and fuzzy slippers on the bottom half here. Maybe that's the case for you. Maybe it's not, but I would love the chance to meet you face to face if you're open to turning your camera on.
Love it. Who would say no to that pitch, man?
I mean,
Right? We
Bob,
gotta
Shay,
The
You're so
soft
good.
bully.
Dan, are you guys doing anything else to get people when they're like just not on camera and you're like the only person on there?
I just go with what Lauren said. I don't think
Yeah.
you can caption it any better than that.
Yeah.
Fuzzy slippers, huh, Dan? You got them on right now, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, we don't want to go there, Lauren, but yeah, it's I'm quite comfortable with this embarrassing look, actually. But
Nice.
no, I do think you can set it up, as I was saying earlier, when you're scheduling a meeting in advance to preset that and just say, look, you may be traveling and I may be too, or what have you, but really like to, us going into business together is as much about us getting to know you as you getting to know us. And so we might not do every meeting face to face, but let's do the next one if we can, or let's do some of these, face to face on the camera so we can get to know one another. And
I have a question for all of us. Oh, sorry, Morgan.
I was just going to say, I do run into some people that surprisingly say, geez, I don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And that's like, well, I have to question whether we really want to be in business together if you've survived that long and you can't use Zoom. But yeah, anyway, sorry. Go
If someone
ahead, Bob.
doesn't, if like I send out a calendar link, it's automatically goes to a Zoom. And I always leave my camera on, but a number of times people, like you say, are in the car, don't want to be on camera. My question to everyone, who leaves their camera on most of the time, even if the other person is off camera for whatever reason?
100%.
I do too.
Every time.
You all do?
Every
Yeah.
time.
Good.
Why do you leave it on?
Well, for myself, the reason I leave it on is because what you just mentioned. If I don't have it on, I'm gonna think about a lot of different things, and I'm not gonna be as focused as I need to be. So it's a lot of it's for me, and also my hand motions, the way I deliver it. Like I want to feel like I'm in a face-to-face conversation.
That's right.
If I don't have that on, then I'm going to distract my own self with other things that are going on. I might be all over the place myself. So my thing is like, I want to be as focused as I can in this conversation. So I want to have my video on. I want to be able to articulate my points. You can see me and you feel more comfortable with me because I have it on. And a lot of times people come on the next call and they have their camera on because I kept it on the entire time.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if they have it or not. I always have it on. That's my take.
Thanks, Morgan. That's
Cool.
good.
Bob, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
The only thing I wish we do have this recorded. That's a great soundbite right there, Morgan. I would only add this little oxytocin thing that I mentioned before. So if Lauren's off camera and I smile, can we make this next meeting and she sees me smile? There's a little more connection.
Yeah.
And a little more pressure. I mean, that's why field sales is a little bit easier, right? Like I'm standing right here in front of you. Try, say no. Just say no.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Really good point.
We have a higher close rate. I think it's like 100 or the stats say it's like 150% like increase in next steps and close rate when you have video on. So
Wow.
I'm kind of like, all right, well, if that's what the stats say, I probably should put video on.
I gotta look that one up.
Yeah.
Sounds,
so I'll
that
send it to you.
sounds like somebody made that up, but that's okay. Let's go with it.
Hey, I read the stats and it sounded good to me. We've seen faster sales cycles when people put on video, and I was like, all right, cool, let's ride with it, right? It definitely sounds like a made up stat though. You know what, today?
That's right. We can go into business and just make up stats.
Hey,
really
all
like.
day long.
Add a decimal and it sounds better.
Yeah.
Right? If it were 149.7%.
160.5. So in terms of stats, and we're talking about different things there, measuring, right? So what should we be measuring for field sales reps now in this current climate?
Oh, that's tough. I like inside sales is like baseball, man. We measure everything, right? Yeah. Because we can, and which is why we move so fast and we're so nimble and we're used to that. But I haven't met a transitioned, right, field to virtual seller who loves the idea of having calls, conversations, talk time, connects, and quotes counted. Shay, how about you? It seems like your team is kind of a blend. Have you always counted those things for field sellers?
Yeah, I would say we've kind of transitioned to it more as like being in the time that we're living in now, and a big focus on a lot of those like little metrics that once didn't really matter, if you will. So yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of those little things are adding up to be like a bigger deal for field sellers, like the calls to get the appointment, like you talked about earlier, like the 6 touch points, like that. Now we need to track that, because when the results aren't there, then we got to backtrack to figure out why we didn't get there. And so I think that's what a lot of companies I think are struggling with, is we didn't really track anything. Like people weren't logging things in Salesforce always, like, like the variety of different things that you hear from the classic field sellers, that they were just going door to door. And now it's like, what is the right thing to measure, and what should we be looking at on a day-to-day basis?
Dan, you've always historically been sort of an inside and blended approach too, right? So adding measurement wasn't new to your team either, was it?
It really wasn't. We've always sort of measured the basics: calls made, calls to, appointments to sales. Those are kind of the basics. How many headliners? We call an initial meeting. We make a call for an appointment to really have a serious discussion about franchising. That first meeting we call it a headliner. So we track all of those. There's always been a resistance to that, for the most part. There's just kind of a natural resistance to it. And I use the baseball or the golf analogy as all the time. I don't spend a lot of time on it, admittedly. I just tell people when I hire them, look, that's the way we play the game. It's, I'm sympathetic to your discomfort with it, but not that much, and I'm not flexible on it. And so
this is me pretending to care.
You're right. So you sort of start the relationship that way. And then I think maybe one thing I could say in Exec Vision is they've really helped me with this is, okay, you've got this feedback that you're hearing and you're listening, you're observing, Dan. How do you deliver that feedback around the measurements you're taking? And that's where I think my game has really improved a lot. And that takes the discomfort off them when you're delivering the feedback and the coaching in a way that really is useful to them. If you never do anything with it except ping them when they miss their call quota, that's shame on me.
Yeah. I have to think, like, if I had a choice, right, and I've got a now virtual team, and what tools, metrics, measurements, like what's the one trick I'm going to take from the inside bag and bring over to my virtual sellers? It's your Exec Vision. It's the call coaching. It's the listening to the recorded calls. I would much rather be giving them advice on your delivery now that you're here in this virtual world, and that coaching on the skill than, the straight up metrics.
And I call that really simple: quality over quantity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple.
Mic drop.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's it.
listen.
No, but you're
listen,
right.
25 years ago to the day, well, maybe not September 9th, but 25 years ago, before we had video, we barely had the internet back then. It was all about phone calls. So we measured attempts. And my gut was telling me that reps were failing, but they were making all these calls. So I did a correlation analysis, and I correlated percent to quota against number of calls. What do you think I found out? What do you think?
Direct correlation.
No correlation. The top reps were not the top callers. Now, they weren't at the bottom, but you dig, peel back the onion, you find out, damn, they're good on the phone. They have a persuasiveness. They listen well. They discover well, right? All the things that we know we need today. When anybody says to me, this is where I'm going to get a little controversial here. If anybody says to me, Matt, sales is a numbers game, I'm like, no, it is not. If it was a numbers game, anybody could be successful. What is our success rate today? We've measured this in a recent research. Around 56% were not making quota. Half of every salesperson is not at quota. Mm-hmm. And it may be higher than that. If it was a numbers game, just make enough, do enough, and you'll eventually sell enough. It's not true. Now, I'm not saying you got to pick up the phone. You got to make the Zoom calls. You got to do all this activity.
Bob's just saying hang out and you'll be fine.
It'll just come. Just
no,
but
correlate it. I put the challenge out to anybody watching. Go correlate your top performers with a quantity metric, especially a call quantity metric or whatever you're measuring, and correlate it, and then come back and talk to us.
We actually ran into that recently with prospecting. Like we had the AEs were originally not prospecting. Everything was set by SDRs, and we've transitioned to now AEs having to prospect. And we had a quantity metric that they had to hit this certain amount every week. And the reps that had the best results had some of the lowest because they actually spent the time to focus on it and do the best. So now we've like flipped what we thought, would work and flipped that script.
Yeah.
And here's a follow-up question from Richard. Calls versus deals depends on what type of customers, SMB, mid-market, enterprise. I'm guessing he's saying, I guess that would probably depend on each segmentation there. Richard's question.
Richard, help us out. What do you mean calls versus deals? Yeah. Right? Are you talking about, do I measure calls versus like the correlation? Like in what segments are more calls important?
Oh, gotcha.
That's what I think he's saying, right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I'm leading to believe what that is, but maybe when Richard will come back and he'll clarify that for us here in a little bit. Yep. How is it correlated by segment is what he's asking.
What segments require more calls?
Interesting. Well, I can tell you a segment that requires fewer calls, and that is medical doctor offices. Why? Because they have to have someone always answer the phone.
Yeah. Education.
Good one.
It does depend on your motion too, right? Are you cold calling into SMB different than when I've got an account base in SMB? Are you cold calling into enterprise? Different, right? Than when. But I think as a general rule, our entire industry has gotten past using number of dials as any level of gold standard. If anything, it's a backup and a leading indicator metric where it's the minimums, right? At the very least, you move to conversations or talk time. And that's a good KPI to say, am I getting the right kinds of conversations? Am I getting the right things in the funnel? And moving those steps down. I think most great leaders only revert back to looking at dials when they know there's a problem. Somebody's not getting it done in the pipeline. All right, I need to hold somebody's feet to the fire. Let's go uncover what's happening. No, you're not having conversions. No, you're not having conversations. Well, that's because you're calling 17 times a day. That's just not going to work. And it gives us that, honestly, that stick, right? There's carrots and sticks. And, if there's skill but no will, it's still not going to work. And that's what helps them coach them up or out.
And I think to Bob's point, like you talk about executives, we talk about coaching. It's that proactive coaching. Like, how can I help my reps get better at the calling? So when they make a call, they are 100% confident that they can convert. Will it convert every single time? We all know that won't happen. But the thing is, like, they are confident that it will. So I guess for each person here on the panel, my question to you is, what is the number one skill field sales reps should be learning more?
Nice.
When I spoke to the 40 field sales reps, a light bulb moment went off when we talked through organizational. How do you organize your day? How do you time block? How do you set aside time to prospect? So I think one of them, it may not be the biggest. I think one is certainly now that you're not free to get in your car and hear the jingle of the keys, so to speak, you're stuck. You can't get away from this right here unless you walk outside. So how do you organize effectively routines into your day?
Okay. And I think on top of that, like, what works best for you? Like, I love to do my Peloton from 12 to 1, and that works for me. And I like get joy from that. So I work with a lot of my reps of like, what does your schedule need to look like? Because this is our new normal. And like, it's not going to be the 8 to 5 that you used to do before. So like, what do you need to do to be the most successful and kind of like fill your engine? Because let's be honest, like being on Zoom for 8 hours is like, it's a lot more exhausting than I think anyone thought it could be. And even more so than in person, because you're not getting like that vibe from Lauren or Bob, where you're like, oh, okay, this is great. And you're kind of feeling energized. I know from an extreme extrovert, I know I'm missing that at least.
Listen, Shay, that's a huge point. I used to be in love with Zoom 2 or 3 years ago. Then all this hit, and I got to a point where like, I can't be on camera anymore. I mean, my back. In fact, I'll show you. This is what Lauren told me to buy because I was getting so tense. I had to, get off the camera.
I feel that.
Good point.
Exactly what. That's awesome. It's so funny. True. Dan, do you want to take it next, or do you want me to go?
No, go right ahead.
I'm torn, right? But I think that one of the best things, if we're talking about confidence, Morgan, like I think it's first base skills. So let's go back to baseball, right? Moneyball. You can't get home if you can't get on first. So first base is getting those conversations. And that's what's tough. Even if you're calling into an install base of customers, you're not there with the influence and the donuts. How do we get them to call us back? So that's excellence in voicemails. Basic, good skill to start with. You can like literally get an extra sales day if you can just get people to freaking call you back. And the other first base skill I love is those introductions. Like you finally catch somebody. How do you keep them on the phone and prevent them from brushing you off? So it's about getting the conversations, and those are slightly foreign, also basic virtual selling phone skills. What do you think, Dan?
I don't think, thank you. I don't think the skills are really maybe related. These were important skills pre-COVID, now post-COVID. I'm just listening intently. Time blocking, I had forgotten about that, but I really had to work on that with the team when this whole thing opened up. Just like, what does your day look like? Bob, we do measure number of dials, and I am hesitant I totally agree with your quality over quantity statement. And I'm not just saying that, I really do.
Yeah.
But it is, as you said, Lauren, a look for me into, all right, what's happening in the rest of the sales process? And it's something I could go back to, because you really do need quantity, but you have to be willing to make, in our case, 10 to 20 calls a day.
Sure.
Or more, my real answer when you say what's the number one skill, and this is just probably the way I think, but I tend to think it's always when you get into a conversation, can you discover well? Can you put their needs first? Can you really listen well and help draw out of them those things that, they might be looking for or might not know that they're looking for? I always think that's kind of the sweet spot of selling success.
Can't disagree with that.
Yep.
All great points. across the board. And we have about 3 minutes left. So I don't know if anyone has any questions that they want to drop in while we're here. But I mean, if no questions come through, we have like 3 minutes. I don't know if the panelists, there's like one lasting thing that you want to say to the audience here that they can walk away with. Could be a quote, I don't know, tactical advice you got, whatever you have for them as we wrap up the session.
I would say have some fun with it. Like it's actually not the end of the world. You know, if we're on this panel, we're on this call, whether we're sitting in an office, which we're probably not, or our house, or, you know, working from the back room on a Zoom call.
Like closet last week.
Right. Look, we're employed. We're getting to learn some new skills, and we're still talking to some great people and closing a bunch of deals. So just chillax a little bit, have some fun with it. It's going to be all right.
Great tip.
Love it. I say embrace the learning. I'm going to go right off what Dan is saying, right? Don't wait for it to switch back. Use this opportunity. If you've been inside for 10 years, get great at video. If you've been outside for 10 years, get great at phone. Right, if you're a brand new manager, whoa, what a tough time to be leading a virtual team. So we've got the travel time back in our day. Dedicate that to yourself and raising your game and finding those skills to be better instead of struggling through it.
Yep.
Well said.
Great points. Bob, Shay,
go ahead.
I'd say kind of embrace, this is your new normal, so embrace it. Like if you keep looking, I know I lived in the past for a while. I was like, I want to be back in the office. Like just embrace it. This is our normal. So I think figure out what works for you and how you can level up your game and be the best that you can, but also like do what you need, because mental health is more important than ever right now. And so like whatever, that's going to look different from everyone, but take time to actually like evaluate that and figure out what works the best for you.
Yeah.
You know, I would leave a tip that says be an inventor, right? Through hard times, you know, invention. What's that saying that says necessity is the mother of all invention, right? We've seen things invented because of this. Morgan had a comment and I took away a tip. He said, when I leave my camera on, I can gesture. Lauren said, when you leave your camera on, they're a little more accountable. These things we weren't thinking of these things a year ago. So this is an exciting time, right?
Yeah.
And things are going to be invented or found new ways to sell virtually tomorrow that we didn't even think about today. Exciting times.
Absolutely. And then we have this is rapid fire as we get out of here. One question. What is the top tip for overcoming call reluctance?
Just jump in the water, man. Don't stand there looking at it for 10 years. Just get in and hit the ball. Get after it.
Look up Lauren Bailey and watch some of her videos.
Yeah.
She tells you how to pick up the phone. I love it.
Pick up the phones. We've said that for years, right? My cheat, frankly, is I call somebody who I love who loves me first, right? So you start with hey, it's so great to hear from you, and then go downhill from there.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Jay, what would you say?
I would just say, just do it. Just like rip the Band-Aid off. Do your hardest thing the first thing in the morning. So then your day just goes down from there. Yeah, eat the frog.
This is one thing that helped.
Frog?
Eat the frog. Yeah.
It's a book.
It's a book. Yeah.
Eat that frog. You know,
Eat
you
the
eat your
frog.
big frog early in the morning.
Not actually go to the market and get a frog. You know, that probably might not help you.
I've had frog legs. Good.
Frog legs are good.
They are good.
One thing that I suggest to people is to have a song before you go into your call blitz. So how the brain works is like I have playlists for everything I do, like a playlist for when like I go to prospect. I have a playlist when I need to focus and answer emails. I have a playlist when I'm making new content. So based on how the brain works, if you have a certain song in your head, it programs the body to operate and just do it. So find a song that you like and play it before you make calls. And then your brain's like, yep, it's time for us to make calls. So that's something I would do as well.
Oh, I like that.
Tip. Good tip.
It's almost a key jingle.
Yes, exactly. Same thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So everyone that came here, thanks for engaging. Thanks for asking questions. I'll shout out to our panel for providing amazing insights. Any lasting things, Kanika, that we need to say before we get out of here?
You guys did amazing. This was a great session. Yeah.
It was
I
fun.
think we are good to go.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks
Yeah.
to all our guests too.
Bye.
Absolutely. You guys have a great one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.